Welcome back. There's growing concern over rising incidents of school violence. The crime stats revealed this week show that 19 pupils were killed at school. The Education Department has also recorded 101 cases of pupils on pupil assault. For more reaction on this, I'm joined now by Basil Manuel, President of the National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa. Mr. Manuel, thank you very much for joining us. Now, these numbers are quite alarming to look at the fact that 9 murders and 19 attempted murders are as a result, for instance, of bullying. Is this a reflection rather on society?
Thank you for inviting me. Well, yes, it is. That is the first part. Society in South Africa is known to be violent, and we've had a long history of violence with very little intervention to try and turn that tide around. And that is where the school issue comes in. Schools are microcosms of society, so what happens out there will obviously spill over into schools. However, schools lack early intervention measures, such as school counsellors, guidance counsellors, etc., where we could address the problem before it happens. And so we are reacting more to what has already happened than trying to prevent it. And this is one of the biggest deficits that we suffer in schools, and the results are devastating. If you look at the number of attacks, not only between children, among children, child on child, and even on teachers, we can see that there is a problem that now needs serious attention.
Now, Mr. Manuel, you also mentioned, in answering your question that schools need counsellors. That is, the responsibility of government. That's the responsibility of at least social development and the education department. When you speak to them as NEPTOSA, is that something they're considering doing?
We've raised this issue over many years. Remember, it's not a thing of today. It has been with us now for at least 2.5 decades. And yes, there's an acknowledgement of the need. However, it's always juxtaposed against affordability, etc. But now we need to reflect a little more carefully. Can we afford our children to spiral in this particular direction and only put money up front as the issue that prevents us from attending to it? I think we need to be far more creative, because there are too many schools that will never ever see a counsellor for whatever reason in the entire lifetime, and that is a tragedy. So yes, it's raised. No, it's not being addressed.
Now, it's sort of a catch-22 for teachers who, for instance, go to school to teach pupils but also feel they need to protect themselves from pupils, and probably also go to school with weapons to protect themselves. What would you advise teachers to do? Because, I mean, corporal punishment is not allowed, and you will go to jail if you're found to have hit a pupil.
Let me first be very clear. We will never advocate teachers carrying weaponry to school. Not at all. That is just simply madness. However, we've always advocated for corrective discipline, and many of our teachers are hugely successful with this. However, they are the difficult to teach in schools, which makes it far more difficult. And of course, bringing the tripartite group in becomes so important: the parent, the teacher, the school. And if we don't bring those three together, we never get to resolving the problems. Our teachers and parents are too far apart, and sometimes for very good reasons. Parents work, they are not around during the normal school day or even in the early evening. And so there are certain societal difficulties that are there. However, we can't stop trying. What I want to also say is that we must remember that this is vastly underreported, because these are the reports that arrive at a police station. These are the reports that eventually are reflected in the popular press. But there are thousands of them that don't get reported, both pupil violence on pupils and, of course, violence against teachers as well. And that is where the great concern lies, because we can't focus on this and only think that these are the incidents. They are far, far more. So it is the time to be acting and to put our heads together to try and resolve this societal problem.
Now, Mr. Manuel, tomorrow, matric pupils and their teachers are expected to return to school. The last time NEPTOSA spoke about this, you did say that your stance is that pupils are, of course, safer at school than they are when they're at home, because that's where the COVID-19 pandemic is likely to spread in the communities. But now, NEPTOSA also said 7 out of the 9 provinces were not performing well or failed in terms of delivering PPE. Have you researched anything on how ready schools are across the country to receive matric pupils tomorrow?
No, we don't have a completed survey. We will start a survey now when our first learners get back, because our teachers will be there and of course our principals. But what is important to note is that when we supported and advocated for the closure of schools, it was not only about the peak in the pandemic, it wasn't only about the safety of teachers and learners and their mental health, it also went to the readiness of the system and the failure by certain departments to have schools ready. And I sincerely hope that they have seized upon this time to ensure that every school is ready. When the next cohort of learners comes in, we don't want to be back in that space where we are standing against one another because there have been no deliveries, etc. This is the time to have sorted it out. Now, there are still a few weeks left, and this needs to be done urgently. And if we don't do that, we are not failing our children only. We are failing the country, because our Department of Education must realize that they are the persons standing between the health and welfare of children and teachers and a dreaded disease.
Well, let me thank you very much. That's Basil Manuel, president of NEPTOSA, speaking to us there about everything to do with education.